When Russian leader Vladimir Putin arrived on American soil on Friday, President Trump literally rolled out the red carpet, or he didn't do it, but American service members did, welcoming the Russian dictator with handshakes and applause and smiles, even a ride in the presidential limo. Now, Trump says Putin wants peace in Ukraine. My next guest is not so sure. Joining us now live is President Trump's former vice president, Mike Pence. Vice President Pence, thanks so much for joining us. You just heard Ambassador Witkoff say the meeting was...
Thanks for having me on, Jake.
You just heard Ambassador Witkoff say the meeting was a big success. President Trump says the meeting was a 10 out of 10. What rating would you give it?
Well, first, I think the president should be commended for pursuing peace in Ukraine. This president has already secured peace agreements in Africa, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. I think he deserves credit as leader of the free world for not giving up on Ukraine, particularly, Jake, since there are many voices in and around the administration that would have cut Ukraine loose months ago. So I want to commend the president for trying to make progress. I must tell you, I would have liked to have seen a ceasefire, but the truth is that no deal is better than a bad deal. What we heard Ambassador Witkoff describe is encouraging, that there was at least an assent in Putin's and Trump's meeting to the United States providing security guarantees. And clearly the president didn't forfeit anything having to do with America's national security or with the security of our allies in Eastern Europe in the midst of this war. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's important to remember the bad guy here is Putin. Putin launched an unprovoked, brutal invasion more than 3 years ago. I've traveled to Ukraine twice. I've literally walked the streets, seen the aftermath of that brutal invasion. And now more than ever, America and our allies need to stand strongly with Ukraine and create the conditions for a just and lasting peace.
You said last month that you thought President Trump was beginning to realize, quote, Vladimir Putin doesn't want peace. Vladimir Putin wants Ukraine, unquote. As you noted, there was no ceasefire agreed to. President Trump seemed to indicate before the summit that had to happen, or he said there would be very severe consequences. Since the summit, he's dropped demands for an immediate ceasefire. 5 Ukrainians were killed overnight. He's telling people, you heard Witkoff say, a peace deal, a larger peace deal, can be reached quickly if Putin's demands, which include Ukraine ceding control of the entire Donbass region to Russia, are met. What do you make of all that? I mean, there are observers out there, people who like Trump, people who are rooting for Trump, who think that Trump got played.
Well, look, I served alongside the president for 4 years. I know his style in dealing with these dictators. It's the velvet glove, but I think the hammer needs to come, and it needs to come immediately. I think the president, as he welcomes President Zelensky to the Oval Office tomorrow, and a whole cast of our allies in Europe that are going to be joining him, I think at the same time he ought to pick up the phone and ask Majority Leader John Thune to immediately pass the secondary sanctions bill that is supported by virtually everyone in the United States Senate. I think the combination of engagement, but also making it clear to Putin that we are prepared to take actions that would literally break his economy, even while we redouble our commitment to the security of Ukraine and to working closely with our European allies is important. Look, I said it before, I'll say it again. In the long history of the last 25 years, Putin has made it clear. He launched an attack into Georgia when President Bush was in office. He attacked Crimea and Ukraine when Obama was in office. After that disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan, he crossed the border and started this war 3 years ago. Putin's made it no secret of the fact that he wants to reassert the old Soviet sphere of influence, what we used to call the evil empire in Eastern Europe. And I think Putin only understands strength. So while the president and his diplomatic team engage in this reapproach with Putin, and there seems to be interest, in my judgment, Putin's not going to stop until he's stopped, until he understands that there's going to be enormous cost to Russia, and there's an unflagging commitment to defending Ukraine's sovereignty by the United States and our allies.
Is there any way, I mean, can you explain or do you understand at all how the summit could end without a ceasefire agreed to, and that would be acceptable? I mean, there are 5 Ukrainians who are now dead. I'm not blaming it on President Trump. It's obviously President Putin's fault. But
right.
If the ceasefire had happened on Friday, those 5 Ukrainians would be alive.
Well, your question in the last segment was relevant. There's a way that Putin can end the violence immediately, and that's with a ceasefire, but then move to negotiations. But look, when it ended and we all watched that press conference and it was clear there was no ceasefire, I must tell you that I was not surprised. I mean, there was an agreement by President Zelensky to cease fire back in February. Putin refused it. He's managed to delay the game. All the while, his military has continued its brutal assault on civilian populations in Ukraine. I think that's the reason why. Look, let's have the dialogue tomorrow at the White House. I'm also going to be praying that it's a productive time and a unifying time among all the leaders in the West and the president and President Zelensky. But at the same time, I've always said the United States posture on the world ought to be, one hand extended in friendship and diplomacy, and the other hand resting comfortably on the holster of the arsenal of democracy. I think Putin is only going to understand that there are going to be severe consequences, as the president promised, if there is no progress from here. The last thing we want to see is for Putin to use this latest delay as a reason to continue this war all the way until the winter hits and the fighting season essentially passes in that part of the world. We can't allow Vladimir Putin to run out the clock on the war in this year and in this season. We literally have to do both things, and that is the sanctions ought to be on the president's desk, available for his signature while negotiations begin. That's the most important way that we will ensure that there's real progress toward the peace agreement that the president has said is the ultimate conclusion.
Before you go, sir, here in Washington, D.C., President Trump has deployed the National Guard and other federal troops, ostensibly in response to emergency of lawlessness and high crime in D.C. I am curious what goes through your mind when you see the president aggressively pushing out the National Guard when he didn't do so on January 6, 2021, as the Capitol was under attack, a mob was trying to lynch you, and your family was in danger.
Well, January 6th was a tragic day, but I know we did our duty that day, and I wish the president would have done more. But I welcome his decision to deploy the National Guard and essentially federalize the D.C. Police Department. I know that it's all now working in a very cooperative way. Jake, if the District of Columbia was actually a state, it would have the highest homicide rate in the country. And this is where our national government has to be able to operate, where tens of thousands of people, you included, work every day. I think it's important what the president is doing. I fully support it. And I think the American people welcome the president taking decisive action to ensure the streets of our nation's capital are safe, and also continues to provide resources across the country to make all of our cities and towns and communities safe.
Former Vice President Mike Pence, thank you for joining us. Hope you and your family are thriving.
Thank you. Thank you so much.